In the chaos of global war, sometimes the smallest and strangest ideas turn the tide of history. This is the incredible, little-known tale of how millions of American soldiers gained a decisive advantage, all thanks to a farmer's stupid trick with honey. It's a story that sounds like folklore, yet its echoes of truth run deep through history's hidden corners. It began in the early 1940s, during the height of World War II. Across the United States, the government had launched a massive effort to supply troops fighting in Europe and the Pacific. Factories ran day and night, producing weapons, rations, and medical supplies. Every ounce of innovation counted, and sometimes, innovation came from the unlikeliest places. One of those places was a small farm in Iowa, owned by an old beekeeper named Earl Whitman. Earl wasn't a scientist, or a soldier, or even particularly patriotic. He was just a stubborn old man who loved his bees and hated waste. Every morning, he'd tend to his hives, collect honey, and sell jars at the local market. But one year, something strange happened. His bees began producing honey that didn't crystallize, even in the cold winter months. It stayed smooth, golden, and spreadable, and it never seemed to spoil. Earl didn't think much of it at first, but word spread. Local grocers wanted more. Then a food scientist from the University of Iowa heard about his magic honey and paid him a visit. They ran some tests and discovered that Earl's bees had been feeding on wild clover mixed with a rare species of wildflower that grew only in his fields. The nectar produced a natural enzyme that preserved the honey almost indefinitely. It was sweet, sterile, and completely resistant to mold or bacteria. To Earl, that just meant better sales at the farmer's market. But to the U.S. Army, it meant something else entirely, a way to keep food from spoiling in the harshest conditions. By late 1942, rations were a nightmare. Canned goods were heavy and often went bad in tropical heat. Soldiers complained that their food tasted like metal and smelled worse. But the Army Quartermaster Corps, always on the lookout for new preservation methods, decided to test Earl's honey formula. They discovered that a small coating of his special honey could preserve bread, fruit, even meat for weeks longer than usual. The natural sugars sealed the food from oxygen and bacteria, acting like an edible armor. Soon, government scientists were working day and night to replicate the effect. They mixed honey with various enzymes, dehydrated it, powdered it, and turned it into thin sheets that could wrap around rations. The result was revolutionary, a new kind of food preservation that was light, nutritious, and long-lasting. By 1943, Earl's stupid trick with honey had quietly made its way to military supply lines. American soldiers heading to North Africa received new, honey-sealed, rations that stayed edible under blistering heat. In Europe, paratroopers carried energy bars infused with honey for fast calories. In the Pacific, honey-coated medical bandages kept wounds sterile in humid jungles. The simple idea of using nature's own preservative changed everything. Soldiers began calling it liquid gold. It wasn't just food, it was morale. A taste of sweetness in the middle of war. Something natural, comforting, and oddly human amidst the machines of destruction. Letters home often mentioned it. Got some honey bars today, best thing I've eaten in weeks. Commanders noticed that troops with access to honey-based rations suffered fewer cases of food poisoning and infection. Even medical officers reported faster healing when using honey-infused dressings. The secret spread quietly through Allied ranks. British forces started using honey salves for burns. The Russians experimented with honey as a makeshift antibiotic. But the large-scale success of honey in American logistics was unprecedented. It wasn't just the preservation, it was the chemistry. The glucose and fructose in honey provided instant energy without upsetting digestion. That made it perfect for soldiers on long marches or in combat zones. By 1944, the honey-based preservation technique was helping to supply entire divisions across Europe. D-Day rations contained honey-infused chocolate and biscuits. Even the emergency packs carried by pilots and sailors included small honey capsules. It was cheap, renewable, and effective, all born from one farmer's stubborn bees in Iowa. Ironically, Earl Whitman never fully understood his role in history. When government trucks arrived at his farm to buy barrels of his honey, he thought it was just another order. He joked that maybe the army just wanted to make sweet tea for the generals. When the local newspaper ran a story calling him a patriotic innovator, he laughed and said, "I just let the bees do the work." After the war ended, scientists traced how honey's enzymes and acidity helped preserve food and prevent infections. They published papers on it, giving credit to the Iowa beekeeper, whose honey had inspired the research. Earl received a modest check from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, payment for his honey supply during the war. He never sought fame, but he unknowingly contributed to one of the great unseen victories of the Allied effort, the ability to keep millions of soldiers fed, healthy, and alive far from home. Decades later, when historians studied wartime logistics, they realized just how crucial those innovations were. Supply lines often determine the fate of wars more than battles themselves. The ability to transport fresh, safe food across oceans and deserts gave the U.S. Army an edge that Axis forces could never match. While enemies struggled with spoiled rations and rampant disease, American troops had steady nourishment, and even a sweet treat to lift their spirits. Today, honey remains an important natural preservative. Scientists continue to explore its antibacterial properties for medicine and food technology. What was once dismissed as a stupid trick has become a model of bio-inspired innovation. Earl Whitman's bees unknowingly bridged nature and science, showing that even the smallest creature can help shape the course of human destiny. The story of the farmer and his honey is a reminder that victory in war isn't always decided by generals or weapons. Sometimes, it's won by ordinary people, the inventors, the tinkerers, the dreamers who stumble upon something extraordinary. Earl's honey didn't fire bullets or fly planes, but it kept the soldiers who did alive and strong. In the end, that might have mattered just as much as any weapon on the battlefield. So the next time you stir honey into your tea or spread it on toast, remember this: somewhere in history, a farmer's bees helped change the world. A stupid trick turned into a secret weapon, and millions of soldiers, marching across continents, carried with them a small taste of sweetness, and the unseen gift of one man's simple, natural genius.